Imagine going to the store to buy groceries for the week. This isn't just any typical week though. Instead of buying a loaf of bread for $2.50, milk for $3.95, and eggs for $1.50, the total cost is going to come out to about $2 million. Why? Because the US dollar just lost its value. So what would happen if the dollar collapses? We can look back in history to see what has happened before, to get a better understanding of what might happen again, should the dollar collapse. The most well-known currency collapse in history might be Germany post-World War I. Germany had to pay off other countries for the war but refused to repay their debts. Nearby countries took action and occupied Germany and pressured the country to pay their debts. Germany then printed so much money that its currency's exchange rate dropped all the way down to 1 for 1 trillion. Another country whose currency saw the same fate as Germany's is Argentina. Argentina enjoyed a robust economy until the OPEC oil embargo in the 70s. This triggered civil unrest and threatened a severe recession. In order to evade a recession, the company printed money to encourage spending. But in the end, printing money didn't work out and GDP dropped 12%. Inflation became so bad that the new peso was equal to 100 billion pesos pre-1983. Other countries such as Zimbabwe, Peru, Chile, Iceland, Venezuela, Ukraine, and Hungary have all undergone a currency collapse due to hyperinflation. The main cause? Printing money. Printing money and adding currency to a struggling economy is necessary at times, but when overdone, it only thickens the economic decline. If all these countries experience their currencies losing their value due to printing money, it's safe to assume that this is how the dollar would lose its value as well. In fact, this has become a recent concern since 80% of all US dollars that are currently in circulation were printed in 2020 and 2021. Since the United States economy was struggling due to the coronavirus and many stores shutting down their indoor operations to prevent the spread of COVID, certain political parties thought it was necessary to print money to keep the country from entering a recession. In 2020, nearly $3.5 trillion were printed, and in 2021, $13 trillion were printed. This is concerning and inflation has already set in, but hyperinflation is unlikely to happen. Countries that saw hyperinflation and a collapse of their currency added, at times, over 1,000% of cash into circulation. Germany, for example, added 502% in just a few years before their currency lost its value. Now, let's get back to a made-up scenario where the US dollar lost its value. The first thing to happen would be investors, banks, and even countries would try to sell most if not all of the dollars they had for a more stable currency. This mass selling would only worsen the problem and devalue the dollar more as supply would outweigh demand. The main issue would be countries selling any US dollars they had, causing the US dollar to no longer be the reserve currency of the world. The US dollar owning the reserve currency of the world gives the United States an advantage that would be lost when the dollar collapses. Since almost all commodities are bought with the US dollar, the United States doesn't have to pay any exchange rate costs and receive lower borrowing costs. When the US loses both of these advantages, the cost of all imported goods will rise, further decreasing the value of the dollar. Next, those that live in the US would default to paying with currency that's not the US dollar. The euro would probably be next in line as they account for 20% of the world's global reserves. See, currently the US dollar accounts for 60%. But other methods could be used as well. People could turn to a barter system, or even use commodities such as gold to pay for products. When the Zimbabwe dollar crashed, the US dollar started being used because it was the world's reserve currency and therefore the most spendable. Of course, the Zimbabwe government wasn't too happy about this and penalized people for using the US dollar. But the black market currency prevailed and the Zimbabwe government gave in. To this day, the people of Zimbabwe still use the US dollar. There is one good thing about the collapse of a currency. Let's say you bought a house a few years back and still owe $100,000 to the bank to pay off your mortgage. Now that the dollar collapsed, you are still $100,000 in debt, but now that there is a 1,000+% increase of money in circulation, this debt will be very easy to pay off. That $100,000 that you owe on your house is like paying it off with a single dollar before the currency lost its value. The bad part about this? Lots of banks will go under. It will basically be the 2008 Great Recession all over again. But eventually everything will go back to normal. Those living in the United States will use the euro just as they would the dollar, and wages and prices would both return to normal. Now, will the US dollar see a collapse anytime soon? It's very unlikely. Not only are we the #1 reserve currency across the world, but we are also one of the biggest economies in the world as well. Unless money keeps being printed every year like it was in 2021, inflation should cool down, and the dollar will hold its value. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with market news. Thanks for watching and stay informed.